basic idea of a social movement is that people come together and jointly take action to help achieve a certain aim. So in this CME workshop we will look at, firstly, exploring different types of social movements and what change that they have created, and secondly, consider important lessons from other equality movements and how we can apply these in Scotland.
In the year 2005, one of my school friends, Agnesa, was downgraded and detained. Basically, 14 Home Office and police officers went to her house, handcuffed her father in front of her two younger brothers and put them in two detention-like vans, and they drove them to a detention centre in England and locked them up for 3 weeks. They've done nothing wrong, and their only crime was that their case was rejected and they were going to be deported, even though they were living here for 5 years at that time. So we started the Glasgow Girls campaign. In the year 2004, a year before Agnesa was taken away, I had received my leave to remain, which meant I could stay in the UK, so I wasn't in fear of being downgraded or detained. So when Agnesa got taken away, my mum actually, she was really worried and thought, look Amal, you can't do anything, you know, this is the Home Office you're taking on. I said to her, I was like, I know we have leave to remain, we can stay in this country, but I'm not going to sit down and do nothing about it. I will, you know, I can't live with myself, my conscience won't let me, I have to make a stand. I didn't know what we were going to achieve. You know, nobody told us, okay, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to start a campaign and it's going to win all these awards and there's going to be a musical and a film as well about it. And I would have thought, no chance. So what we did on that Monday, the other girls kind of came into Mr. Garvin's class and we all kind of protested without even knowing what a protest was. We didn't know what a campaign was. We didn't know what a social movement was. All we knew was that we want our friend back. For us, we may have not changed a huge amount of policy. We did make a small change, which was so for the school kids who are sitting their exams, they would not be downgraded. But then again, after they finish the exams, they could be downgraded. So all of the kids were saying, what's the point? This piece of paper which has our grades on it is not going to make a difference in a war zone country like Iraq or Somalia or Afghanistan. So even though it wasn't great, it was still something, and it's better than nothing. And somebody asked earlier, actually, you know, what makes a social movement successful? And I think making a difference, that's the biggest thing. You know, it might not be a huge change, but any change is better than nothing. And I think for us, the biggest thing we managed to achieve is to raise awareness about what was going on and what was happening to children, because so many people, and until this day, people don't know about what's going on. And that's what's been so great about our story, is because of the community came together. We all united from all walks of life, old and young, you know, and from different backgrounds. We just came together and we built this movement, which 10 years later is still very strong, which is great, and it's growing actually. It's kind of taken a world of its own. It's not about 7 teenage girls from Drumchapel High School anymore. It's much bigger than that. It's about Noreen and Jean, it's about Mr. Garvin, it's about our community in Scotstoun. And it's, like I said, it's grown so much. And we always say as well, whoever supports our cause is a Glasgow girl. And now we've got too many, I think, which is great. But I think what's important as well is to realize is the power that people have. You know, if people come together and to fight for a cause, you can achieve so much.
Social movements have been defined as organised efforts to promote or resist change in society. So sometimes it's about introducing new change, but it's also about trying to resist change as well, which rely, at least in part, on non-institutionalised forms of political action. A lot of writers distinguish social movements from formal campaigning organisations, although that's contested. So rather than being organisations, they're interactions between different actors, which may or may not include formal organisations. They're also seen as an alternative to party politics, but as we saw in the recent referendum campaign, they're closely connected and aligned often. Within many social movements, there's debate around the exact focus, what sort of change is being promoted or resisted. So that's all important. And here are some of the elements of that. So the idea that social movements seek to affect perceptions of reality in the target audience, so in the CME's case, within general society. And it might be, for instance, reframing previously accepted behaviour as stigmatising or discriminatory, as unacceptable, and promoting a public feeling of discontent behind a particular issue. Social movements really have been around for at least 200 years, and often they were connected with broad economic and social changes since the mid-18th century. So major examples of early social movements were the right to vote, the abolition of slavery. In some countries this was linked with revolutions such as the French Revolution, so there was quite a number of drivers and examples in history. Many people talk about the 1960s as being very significant in the development of social movements, where social expectations really had a major influence in the development of social movements. And I suppose one characteristic of the new social movement was that focus was much broader than the traditional emphasis on economic matters, and they looked at other forms of inequalities that I mentioned in relation to gender, ethnicity, disability, etc. So many social movements are focused on reform, and that might be changes in some norms or laws. Examples of such movements would include a trade union with a goal of increasing workers' rights. Radical movements are often dedicated to changing value systems in a fundamental way, and examples would include the American Civil Rights Movement. Many social movements are group-focused, and a focus affecting groups in society in general, for example, advocating the change of political system. Others are individual-focused and are very much focused on affecting individuals. Many movements focus on religious freedom, for example, are focused on individual change. I think there's some really important aspects of social media. Can certainly help shape collective identities and reduce participation costs. So rather than people needing to travel and come together, this can all be done virtually across the internet. It's argued that it provides a more inclusive and accessible way for people to engage in the social movement, as people can select their own level of engagement. However, I suppose on the other side, a risk of social media is that it can lead to a very diffuse message.
Now, the primary goal of any social movement is, of course, to influence change, and this requires quite long-term and sustained activity. But that can't happen without the sustained commitment of its members, and this requires a degree of social cohesion within the group, but also a sense of shared identity, shared values and shared aspirations. Now, the relationships and social networks on which social movements depend, and therefore their capacity to influence change, are enabled by regular contact and interaction, by shared aspirations and beliefs, and importantly a sense of belonging and a sense of community. So what kinds of change are we talking about? Well, we can generalise, I think, and say that social movements seek to turn social problems into public issues. Of course, they do have strategic goals, but they recognise that these cannot be achieved without the public pressure for change. And this is how they turn the personal into the political. So it's achieved by changing the perceptions of what is and isn't possible, what is and isn't realistic, and by changing public opinion, and by increasing the reach of the message and activating an ever-expanding base of supporters. In the 1970s, certain academics noticed that political action activism represented quite a viable and collective alternative to individual strategies for coping with stigma and for challenging discrimination. Such strategies included proactive and collective attempts on the part of stigmatised persons to change public perceptions and create a much more positive public identity. It's important to sum up by suggesting that participation can generate not only positive outcomes for the individual, but also for the collective. And it can add meaning, purpose and significance to individual lives.
To anybody who believes in something, you can make a difference. I mean, this is just an example. And I say if anybody's passionate and wants to make a difference, they can. It won't be easy, it will be hard, but it'll definitely be worth it.